Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are taking a huge corporate document, the 2021 annual report from one of Brazil's biggest financial institutions,
Mhm.
and we're turning it into a blueprint.
Right.
So forget the dry numbers. What we found in here is a really clear picture of how a banking giant is navigating two massive transformations that are happening everywhere.
Hyper-digitalization and radical sustainability.
Exactly. So our mission for you, the listener, is to see how this institution, which handles hundreds of millions of operations a day, managed to position itself in 2021 as a leader in both tech and environmental responsibility.
And it's more than just a blueprint. It's really a high-stakes stress test. You have to remember the context of 2021.
Sure, the pandemic was still a huge factor.
A huge factor. Market volatility, operational uncertainty. The real story here is how they delivered strong results for shareholders while also committing to something much bigger.
The long-term stuff.
Yeah, the social and environmental perpetuity. They have this thing called Agenda 30 BB,
Yeah.
and they're aligning their entire operation with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
And we should probably start with the most striking piece of validation, which comes from outside the company.
The Corporate Knights ranking.
The Corporate Knights Global 100 ranking, which named them the world's most sustainable financial institution. That's not just a claim they're making. That is a definitive global ranking.
It's huge. It means they're not just reacting to the future, they're actively trying to define it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the green commitment. The scale of it is just immense.
The scale is really what defines it. By the end of 2021, their sustainable business portfolio had reached our $291.4 billion.
Let's pause on that number.
Yeah.
Because our $291.4 billion, it just sounds like a big abstract figure, right?
It does.
Using a rough exchange rate for that period, we're talking about a sustainable portfolio that's getting close to 60 billion US dollars. That's an enormous amount of capital, even by global banking standards.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not just the size, it's the proportion and the growth. That number is a 19.1% jump over the year before.
Wow.
And crucially, it makes up 37.1% of their entire credit portfolio.
So over a third. This isn't some little green fund on the side.
Not at all. It's over a third of their core business strategy.
So they're not treating sustainability like, some kind of philanthropic side hustle.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally baked into their risk and profit model.
It is.
So what kind of projects fall under that umbrella?
Well, the scope is deliberately broad. They're trying to maximize both social and environmental impact. So you've got credit for renewable energy efficiency.
The obvious stuff.
The obvious stuff, yes. But also sustainable transport, huge subsidized housing programs like Mini Casa Minha Vida, and then significant credit going to education and health.
So they're actively funding the transition.
To a low-carbon, higher social impact economy, yes.
This brings us right to their role in Brazilian agribusiness. I mean, they call themselves the sector's biggest partner.
And the numbers back that up. They announced their largest harvest plan ever in 2021. They dispersed over $89 billion in the first 6 months alone.
$89 billion. That's a 62.8% growth compared to 2020. That's incredible.
It is. But what's fascinating here is how they steer that capital, how they make sure it aligns with, social equity and environmental goals. They really target two key areas.
Okay, tell us about them.
So first is PRONAF. That's the National Credit Program specifically for family agriculture.
So smaller farms.
Exactly. Small to mid-sized farmers who are absolutely critical for food security and social stability, they contracted our $18.4 billion through that program alone.
And that gives them, what, a huge market share?
A commanding one. 46.5% of that entire market. They're the engine for smallholder growth in Brazil.
So it's not just financing the huge commodity producers, they're underwriting family businesses. What's the second area?
Second is the Low Carbon Agriculture Program, or ABC. This is all about incentivizing better environmental practices in farming, things like efficient irrigation, restoring pastures, that sort of thing. They held 61.4% of that market.
61%. So they are essentially the primary driver of environmental modernization in Brazilian farming.
You could say that. They're using their capital to basically set the environmental standard for the whole sector.
It's powerful. But where do they get the capital for these targeted green investments?
Well, they create specific financial products. A great example is the LCA Verde, or Green LCA. It launched in 2021 and pulled in over $1 billion raise.
And that money is earmarked.
Exclusively. It's designed to channel investor funds directly into low-carbon operations and family agriculture. The product itself is the pipeline.
That makes sense. But for a bank this size, Managing the risk of all these new green operations has to be a huge task. How are they systematizing the accountability?
They've rapidly scaled up their internal risk assessment. They use something called an ASG questionnaire, that's for socio-environmental governance, on their high-impact clients.
Yeah.
In 2021 alone, they applied 3,699 of these questionnaires.
Which is a huge increase, right?
129% increase over the year before. That rapid scaling, it shows you they're serious about getting that socio-environmental risk data before they lend the money.
I guess you can only handle that kind of complexity with sophisticated technology. You can't process nearly 4,000 extra assessments by hand.
Precisely. And in agriculture, the tech connection is even tighter. They manage climate risk with a tool called ZARC.
ZERF.
Zoneamiento Agricola de Risco Climatico. Essentially, it's a predictive model that looks at the climate and soil for specific areas to see what crops will do well there.
So it's about reducing their risk exposure before a loan even gets written,
Exactly. It's technology actively mitigating physical climate risk.
which is the perfect bridge to our next big segment,
Yeah,
the digital transformation. Because you just can't achieve that level of complexity without a tech foundation that can handle massive scale.
absolutely.
So how big are we talking? What's their digital infrastructure like?
It is colossal. They're running on a hybrid cloud environment, and they execute over 270 million operations daily.
Daily. Let's just let that sink in. Hundreds of millions of transactions, calculations, data points flowing through their systems every 24 hours.
It's a staggering volume.
250 million operations every day. I mean, that proves the digital shift isn't just theory, it's where their clients actually live.
And the client adoption numbers confirm it. 91.7% of all client transactions now happen on digital channels.
Mobile and internet.
Yep. They ended the year with 22.2 million active digital clients. The physical branch is, well, it's quickly becoming an anomaly.
But just shifting from a branch to an app, that's not enough, right? The experience has to be intelligent. It has to be personalized.
Yeah.
How do you use AI for 22 million different people?
Well, their core idea is what they call the segment of one.
The segment of one.
They use intelligence analytics to analyze over 90 million clients and prospects every single day. That churns out over 2 billion possibilities for personalized offers. The AI is constantly learning what you need at that exact moment.
So it's moving way beyond just simple demographic buckets.
Way beyond. It's dynamic.
And they're using this AI not just to sell things, but to solve, old bureaucratic headaches.
The best example is the prova de vida, the proof of life.
Right, where retirees have to physically show up to prove they're alive to get their benefit.
Exactly, a huge pain point. So they introduced a feature using AI and facial recognition right in the mobile app.
So no more travel, no more waiting in line.
For over 128,000 beneficiaries, yeah. It's a tangible improvement in quality of life, and it's driven by AI convenience.
That's a perfect example of using tech to just reduce friction. And stepping back, we also see them investing in the bigger tech ecosystem, right? Outside their own walls.
Yes, they made indirect investments in 29 startups in 2021 through specialized funds.
So they're keeping a pulse on disruptive innovation.
Mm-hmm. And, maybe more importantly, they are shaping the regulatory future. They co-chaired 2 key working groups in the Open Banking Convention.
Good technical ones. GT specifications and GT architecture.
That's right. And when you're co-chairing those groups, you are literally writing the rules for how the entire financial system will connect and share data.
That is a massive strategic play.
It absolutely is. And ultimately, this all pays off. The report points out that digital transactions, like getting personal credit or buying an investment, are just significantly cheaper than doing it at a branch or an ATM.
So the transformation is directly lowering their operating costs.
Correct.
Which brings us to our third segment, where we look at resilience, people, and I think some of the interesting contradictions we found in their internal eco-efficiency.
Right. Well, looking first at their role post-crisis, they were crucial for stabilizing small businesses. They liberated our $70.4 billion to micro and small enterprises, benefiting almost 350,000 companies.
And they were a major channel for government help, too, weren't they?
Absolutely. They were primary players in distributing the ProNAPI emergency credit line. That was $8.1 billion through that program alone. They really positioned themselves as a crisis partner for the economy.
And internally, of course, they had to manage the stress on their own people.
They did. A key thing was the launch of their mental health program in September 2021. It was built on 5 pillars, everything from healthy habits to direct psychological support.
It's a pretty holistic acknowledgement of the strain their own workforce was under.
I think so.
And they're clearly thinking about the talent they need to actually sustain this whole digital ESG transition.
That's where their corporate university, UniBB, comes in. They launch programs like Movimento Evolution, which actively encourages employees to get degrees in tech and innovation.
If you're going to be a tech-first bank, you need the talent to
Your
match.
internal talent has to match that ambition, yes.
Okay, now let's get to the most surprising parts of the report, the operational eco-efficiency metrics.
Right?
The digital push obviously worked in one area. Paper use dropped by over 8%. Makes sense.
Fewer printouts, less mail.
But then you hit the utility data. Water consumption increased by 19.28%, and energy intensity per employee also went up by 5.16%.
This is where we have to look critically. A huge jump in water it's hard to explain. Maybe maintenance issues, maybe more frequent cleaning protocols as people came back to offices.
The energy intensity one is really interesting, though, for a digital leader. Why would energy use per employee go up when so many people and processes are digital?
That is the important question. It suggests that while client transactions move to low-cost digital platforms, the remaining physical operations, the data centers, the cloud infrastructure, are disproportionately energy intensive.
So the tech backbone needed to process those 270 million daily operations is just consuming massive amounts of power.
It seems to be offsetting the gains from, eliminating paper or reducing branch traffic.
It just shows that even the world's most sustainable bank has to grapple with the unintended environmental costs of its own digital infrastructure.
For sure. But they are putting mechanisms in place to try and force change. The Plastico Zero BB initiative to eliminate disposable cups is one.
A good internal metric.
But the more intriguing one, I think, is their internal carbon price. They apply a price of $18 per ton of CO2 equivalent.
And what does that actually do?
It has a dual function. First, it's used to compensate for their operational emissions. But second, and this is the key governance part, that cost gets factored into evaluating internal investments.
So if you propose a new building with a big carbon footprint,
That $18 cost is added to your budget. It creates a financial incentive to choose a low-carbon option from the very beginning.
classic governance, putting a real cost on an externality to drive behavior. And speaking of governance, they got top marks there too.
They did. Highest level possible in the TCU's assessment, maximum score in the IG CEST for the 5th cycle in a row. These aren't just titles, they demonstrate top-tier corporate oversight. That's what investors want to see.
And this rigor extends to their supply chain, making sure contractors don't undercut their ESG goals.
Absolutely. They apply a robust due diligence process to their suppliers. Checks for environmental, human rights, integrity compliance. And they issued sanctions, citing specific cases of labor law violations.
So they're willing to impose costs on their supply chain.
Rather than compromise their mandate, it's critical.
So to synthesize all this, what you, the listener, are seeing here is a huge organization trying to master two mega trends at the same time. They're trying to become the most efficient, personalized digital provider possible while also positioning themselves as a world-leading, green, socially responsible funder.
Precisely. They've managed to integrate the E and G of ESG with the forces of digitalization. But the source material points to a real challenge coming up, and it's not about technology or capital, it's about the S for social, specifically their workforce.
We mentioned the well-being programs, but the data on retention was pretty striking.
It was. While they're investing heavily in training and culture, the report also shows a rapid spike in employee turnover in 2021.
A spike.
Yeah. For male employees, turnover went up by 4.04 percentage points. For female employees, a 2.55 percentage point increase. That's a significant pressure point.
And that trend runs completely counter to their need for highly specialized skills.
It does. So what does this all mean? Given their clear strategic goals, client focus, radical innovation, sustainability, the biggest challenge in the years ahead might not be managing their cloud infrastructure or calculating climate risk. The real battle might be internal.
It's about the people.
It's about the people. If the future of banking relies on highly skilled talent in tech and ASG, the question for you to consider is this. How effectively can any big organization keep up its transformation speed if it can't hold on to its key talent? And what has to change culturally to keep the very people they need to deliver on those efficiency and sustainability goals? The fight for the future of finance, it might be won or lost in the HR department.